welcome back to Book Club Preview. Today we're looking at The Hobbit, Chapter 18, The Return Journey. And this is so very close to the end. A lot of summarizing kind of the journey as it ends. So if you think, like the beginning of the story, we've been traveling for about 6 months, I would say. Just traveling. And then this last chapter, this is 17 chapters that were like 6 months. And then this last chapter is, I think like 3 months or maybe even 4 months. And there's a lot going on in this last one. But it first starts off with Bilbo waking up. Remember at the end of the chapter, he gets conked on the head by a rock and he's out. He wakes up cold, shivering, and no one's around. He's been asleep or knocked out for a day, 2 days, 20 hours, a while. And finally, he kind of sees someone, he sees kind of some elves walking around, and he's kind of dizzy, and he sees a human, and he's like, "Hey, you!" And the guy's like, "Whoa, why are the rocks talking to me?" Bilbo's like, "Oh, my ring." He takes off his ring, and he's like, "I'm over here." This guy sees Bilbo, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I found you. This was the last search for you. Gandalf wouldn't let us give up. Hurry, you're summoned." And so he picks up Bilbo and he takes him over to where Thorin is. Now Thorin is in a bed and he's about ready to die. He's been stabbed and hurt by the goblins in the battle, and he's grabs Bilbo's hand. "Bilbo, I'm sorry. You're a good friend, and I take back the terrible words I said to you. You are good, you are great, and I want to part in peace, and I'm going to the next life, next world." Bilbo says, "Man, I am so glad to be your friend. I'm going to miss you so much." And then Thorin dies, and Bilbo cries for like the rest of the day. Well, after Bilbo's done crying, the next day I'm guessing, as he's maybe getting a blanket, warming up by a fire, eating some food, he learns about everything that happened while he was passed out. A lot happened. First, the eagles came. A bunch of eagles came because they knew that the goblins were up to something, and they wanted to disrupt their terrible ways. So they were planning to follow the goblins anyways, but they came in, and all the goblins that had come from behind on the rocks, they took all the goblins off of the mountain, which then allowed the human and elves to go into the middle to where Thorin and his friends were. It was still a tough battle. There were still a lot more goblins, but then Bjorn comes out of nowhere. This is like the last hour of the battle. Bjorn just comes in, a giant, humongous bear, and just starts killing everything, smashing everything, taking like these huge wolves in like his hand and just swatting them away. He crushes into where Thorin's party has been fighting the goblins, because even though the humans and elves are trying to get in, they haven't been able to make it all the way. But Bjorn comes in as a huge bear, knocks all the goblins away. He scoops up Thorin, and then he runs off and puts Thorin in like a safe area. So he gets rescued. Then Thorin comes back into the goblins. He's even angrier than he was before, just smashing everyone. He kills all of Blog's guards. He kills even Blog or Blorg or whatever that great orc chief's name is. He kills him. And when that guy dies, the rest of the goblins are like, "Oh my gosh, we're in big trouble." Wah! And they all run away. Well, the humans and elves are really tired because they felt like they were going to die. But when they see that they won, they got more energy. And they end up chasing all of these goblins into the forest, into the mountains, into the rivers, killing almost all of them. And they say about 3/4 of all the goblins in the area died during that battle. And so there was a long peace for a long time because so many goblins and wargs and bad things died in that battle. Well, now the battle's over and the summary's over. And before Bilbo is able to go home, there is Thorn's funeral. Thorn gets buried or in a tomb with the Arkenstone. So Bard gives him the Arkenstone and he's just dead holding the Arkenstone. The elf king, he took Orcrist from Thorin when he captured him, but he gave the sword back and put it on his tomb. And so whenever enemies started to come by the mountain, that sword would glow. And so the dwarves in the mountain always knew when enemies were nearby. Thorin's cousin, Doin, he becomes king under the mountain, and he spreads out the gold like it should be. So Bard gets a 14th share. Okay, so he traded the Arkenstone. He gave it to Thorin, and he got gold and silver, a whole bunch of coins, and the elves got some really nice emeralds. The company, Thorin's company, they all got their reward. And Bilbo was even going to get his reward too, but Bilbo said, hey, this is too much for me, man. Please take it. Just give me 2 treasures, small chests of gold and silver. I'm good. And so they said, okay. And so Bilbo kind of took 2 chests, and then he was on his way home. Gandalf and Bilbo and Bjorn, they followed the elves to the elf home. And when they got there, Bilbo had a beautiful silver necklace that he gave to the elf king. And he said, hey, sorry I was stealing all your food and wine. This is my payment for thieving everything. And then the elves wanted Bilbo and Gandalf and Bjorn to stay longer, but they continued on. And I believe they went, so they had Mirkwood Forest, and they went through it last time. But this time they decided to go up, around and around the forest. Bjorn was going that way, so Gandalf and Bilbo decided to go with him. There were some dangers and still some adventures on this road, but nothing too big when you got Gandalf with you and this giant human that can change into a bear or whatever else and destroy everything. So it was fine. They end up in Bjorn's home and they spend the winter there, and then in the springtime Gandalf and Bilbo continue on their journey home. We have a quick summary of what happens to Bjorn and the humans in the area. Well, Bjorn starts inviting humans to his home and starts celebrating. He becomes a really great chief. He ends up having some kids. Most of his kids are good and warm-hearted, but a few of them were kind of bad. Eventually the humans grew, and those humans, years and years later, ended up cleaning out the Misty Mountains of goblins and taking over the Misty Mountains and making it a very peaceful area. And as going back to the present, Bilbo and Gandalf climb through the Misty Mountains. They look over and they can see the Mirkwood Forest, and they can see a tip of the Lonely Mountain covered in snow. And Bilbo says, so snow comes after fire, and even dragons find their end. Kind of a interesting thought, of fire usually melts snow, right? But snow is coming after fire. And that is how the chapter ends. So the next chapter is definitely the last part where we sum up everything, but certainly most of the story is wrapped up now. Vocabulary, came to himself. This can have 2 meanings. One, you wake up. Okay, you came to is when you wake up. Oh, you fainted or you got knocked out and you maybe smell something really. Oh, you come awake. Come to yourself can also be maybe you were drinking too much and your mind was kind of crazy, and then you quit. That effect kind of left and your own brain again. Or if there's some magic and someone controls your brain and then someone slaps you, psh, and then you're yourself again. So it can also mean that. Rent. Rent is not borrowing something for a while and paying money. In this case, it means ripped open, like rended. Okay, rend is like ripped open. You can't like cut metal really. You gotta like bend it and rip it. And so Thorin's armor was rent open. Amend is to heal. I want to amend our relationship before I die. Will you be my friend again? Mustering is gathering, especially in relation to like an army. If a country starts to go to war, they will muster an army. You know, especially in the old times, okay, the soldiers would go to the town and say, the king needs soldiers. Who's gonna every family needs to give one male to join the king's army. This is mustering, gathering people to be soldiers. Fray is like fight or wild chaos. So Bjorn jumped into the fray of the goblins around Thorin and company. He saved Thorin from the battle, from the fray, and then he re-entered it. Yuletide is often a word used for like Christmas nowadays, but Yuletide just kind of means midwinter. So they spent the Yuletide, the midwinter, with Bjorn at his home. That leaves us with our discussion question. There are so many I could ask, but maybe a simple one here is, if you were Bilbo and you were entitled to a 14th share of the treasure that the dragon had captured, how much would you take? Would you take the whole 14th? Would you take a little bit? Would you take half of that? I don't know. But how much treasure would you try and take back home? Of course, please make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.